Hello there, Guardian, I hope you're doing great today. A lot of people have been talking about the Strand Threadlink Warlock build, and I'm here to tell you, you're playing Strand Warlock wrong. Instead of only using one tool in your tool belt, let's use all of them. Have you ever wanted a build which allows you to debuff your targets, to have incredible survivability, at the same time punching everything you see, and to make you basically feel like Spider-Man? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then do I have the build for you? We'll be using the Strand Broodweaver Warlock. Hop on that healing rift for survivability purposes. You can choose whichever glide you like, but I prefer burst glide, especially since we'll be using the grappling hook. The melee is Arcane Needle. It has 3 charges and you'll throw a needle at your target which will unravel them, which is pretty cool because defeating unraveled targets will spawn a tango for us. Tangos are pretty much green Warmind cells that you can pick up and throw at your enemies, causing them to explode and do a lot of area damage. Also, while you're shooting at an unraveled target, they will create unraveled projectiles that seek out nearby targets. These basically act like green Siva nanites. For our grenade, we'll be using the Strand Grapple. It allows you to swing around like Spider-Man, and while you're swinging, you can use your melee for a powerful melee punch. This does count as an empowered melee attack, which is really important for our exotic of choice. For our aspects, we have Weaver's Skull. Once you cast your rift, you'll create 3 threadlings and deploy any threadlings you may have purged. Threadlings are basically these little green wormy dealies which will go out and hunt your enemies and do a lot of damage to them. For our second aspect, we are using Mindspun Invocation. Once we hit something with our grapple melee, we'll create 3 threadlings. For fragments, we have Thread of Finality. Finisher final blows will create threadlings. This gives us even more wormy dealies to attack our enemies. The second fragment is Thread of Evolution. Threadlings will travel farther and deal additional damage. More damage. Who doesn't want more damage? Our next fragment is probably our most important one. Thread of Generation. Dealing any damage will generate grenade energy. This is one of the pieces of the build which enable us to have pretty much constant grenade uptime. Our last fragment is Thread of Warding. Picking up an Orb of Power will grant us Woven Mail. This is a damage resistance buff which will give us 35% damage resistance on any body shots that we take. And since this is PvE, nothing will actually hit you with a precision shot. Let's move on to our armor. You should get your resilience, recovery, and discipline as high as they can go. For our exotic of choice, something I'm sure nobody expects, Fellwinter's Helm. Killing a target with a powered melee or a finisher will create a burst of energy which weakens nearby targets. But this is not the puny little void weaken which debuffs your targets for 15%. It's actually the highest tier of debuff, debuffing your enemies for 30%. And yes, this does work on your grapple melee as well as your needle melee. Finishers and final blows on more powerful targets will increase the radius of the burst and the length of the weakening effect. The thing which makes this debuff even stronger is that it also disorients your enemies. This makes using finishers a lot safer because debuffed enemies will not be able to see you, hence they won't be able to attack you. And while this is already pretty nutty, we'll increase the power of the build with our armor mods. For your helmet, make sure you put on Kinetic Siphon and the Elemental Damage Siphon of your choice. This will enable both your weapons to create orbs of power on multi-kills, and we need those orbs of power in order to get stacks of armor charge. For your arms, make sure you use heavy-handed. This will create an orb of power every time you kill something with a powered melee, and yes, this does include the grapple melee as well. This mod will keep us pretty much topped off on armor charges almost all the time. Then put on 2 grenade kickstarts which will return some grenade energy every time you throw your grenade. If you have any stacks of armor charge, they will get consumed and the effect will be increased. This together with Thread of Generation and our threadlings will give us back our grenade pretty much every time we hit something. Or if it's not fully refunded, it will be really close and Thread of Generation will complete the work with just a couple of shots to your enemies. Also, make sure you're using authorized mods grenades on your artifact. This decreases the cost of all grenade related mods. For our chest, we have 2 counts of charged up. This will increase the maximum amount of armor charges we can carry from 3 to 5. And since we'll be generating a lot of orbs of power, having those extra armor charges will be very helpful. On the leg armor, we are running double innervation. This decreases our grenade cooldown each time we pick up an orb of power. And considering we're using our grenade melee a lot, we'll be activating innervation very often. Then we have stacks on stacks. Picking up an orb of power will grant us 1 additional armor charge. This basically means that at 2 orbs of power we'll have 4 stacks of armor charge. Then on the bond we have empowered finish. Every time we use a finisher on an enemy, it will grant us 1 stack of armor charge if we don't have any. This is useful for opening up your engagements because you will finish an enemy which will debuff all the enemies around them and will also give you stacks of armor charge in order for you to go with your grenade powered melee and continue cycling onward from there. To round it all off, we're using Bomber twice. It will give us grenade energy every time we use our rift. And now we can move on to the gameplay loop of the build. You just need to open up your engagement with something that will give you armor charge. It can be a multi-kill from your weapons, or it can be an empowered finish. It doesn't really matter. From there onward, you can start grappling to enemies and using your melee when you're close to them in order to use the empowered melee. Hitting bigger packs of enemies will give you more grenade energy back due to threat of generation. After you clear that pack, any surviving enemies around you will be debuffed and won't be able to see you. And of course, they'll be taking extra damage from you as well. They'll also be taking damage from the 3 threadlings that you generate from your powered melee. And they'll take even further damage from the unraveled projectiles that come out of this. At this point, you can just cast your rift to spawn a bunch more threadlings, which will attack even more enemies around you. At this point, your grenade should be back and you should have a bunch of stacks of armor charge that you can use to use your powered melee from your grenade and just cycle it off. From then on, you just rinse and repeat to your heart's content. And that's pretty much the build, Guardian. If you liked this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, and if you really liked it, make sure you sub to my channel because more builds are coming your way. I'll be leaving you with some gameplay of the build so you have a visual aid on how it works. Thank you very much for your viewership, and I'll see you next time, Guardian.
Eliminate the taken blight and summon a balefire in its place. It will consecrate this place and drive the darkness out before it.
Uh-huh.